Hello and welcome to the second video in my build series, if you will, taken with the stunning backdrop of my hometown of Nelson, BC, up from the flagpole right on the top of Elephant Mountain. Where to start? Yeah, this has been a confusing build. Bought the van around, this is just about the beginning of July 2025. I bought the van in 2022, I think it was, or 20, yeah, something like that. I don't know. Didn't get much building done on it for most of the summer. I was busy fishing and working and stuff, and I decided that fall I was going to head up north to a town called Fort St. John and work in the oil patch for the winter, pay off the van in the first winter. So I started working on the van, trying to get the floor done. I didn't happen. I'll explain later. So I decided, well, I need a heater in there if I'm going to be going up north, because it gets really cold up there. So where I worked, where I was driving truck on Vancouver Island, my mechanic that looked after our trucks there, he was willing to help me install the fuel line for the heater into my gas tank. It was the only thing I really wasn't comfortable doing. After watching how it was done, I could quite easily do it myself in the future, but needless to say, I paid him to help me do that. We got that done, which you're going to see here shortly. We're looking underneath my transit right now. This is the fuel intake, so I get my fuel right here by the driver's side door. Fuel comes down here and goes into the tank. Up in there somewhere is the whole assembly that we gotta get at to install the fuel line for the Espar heater. We gotta take 3 brackets off, use a jack, we can lower it down, and then carefully disassemble the pieces here to get to the next part. So this is what the top of the tank looks like. I don't think there's an auxiliary port there that I could have used, or is there? I had read conflicting reports that there were auxiliary ports that you could just tap into, and you don't need this piece here. We are going to find out. So we managed to get this hose off. Now there's just two or three bolts.
Nuts.
They're nuts. They're 10 mil, and we should be ready to take this thing out. After, of course, you deal with more stupid plastic clips. Here's a nice close-up of what it looks like. He's got to get the chisel and the hammer. We'll give it a little persuasion here in a second. Just like that. And here's the goods right here.
Come on.
That's a tight fit to get out.
Yep.
With a lot of persuasion,
A little persuasion.
he got it out. I was going to say we got it out, but really I didn't do anything. I just kind of stood here and looked pretty. That's what the whole fuel pump assembly looks like.
Let's see your little
I can flip it around if you're really curious. There's the large intestines, that's the stomach. And there's the liver. It's got a really big colon. Our next objective is to get this thing inside the fuel tank. I bought it at the Thermo King in Vancouver. That's the part number. So that'll stick right into the tank. This little piece of plastic goes all the way through it. I believe it's to keep any dirt or any grime from getting inside, so you pull that out before you install it. This is the fuel line, so that'll attach onto this end here. You'll use one of these pieces of rubber and a couple of these clamps. That gets your fuel line on. This little guy here has a little tiny O-ring on him. I don't know if you can make it out. It's got just a tiny little O-ring to seal it on the outside of the tank. So now the next part is trying to figure out where on the tank to put it. Attempt number 3. As it turns out, the shaft of that intake, or whatever you want to call it, was a bit too long. It was bottoming out on the tank, so we took a grinder and ground off about 1 inch, and then we'll see if we can get this all on there nice and tight and pretty. So now that we've got that into place, he's going to get a wrench and we'll tighten the nut underneath there. You have to know where your heater's going to be. So do you want the fuel line pointing towards the back of the van, towards the front, left or right? And once we get that tightened, we can reassemble everything and put it back up where it came from. All right, my arm has had enough of a break there, holding this phone up. So now this next part of the install, I'm already up in Fort St. John. I'm waiting to go to work. I had a couple of days before I was supposed to start, so I decided to install it. It was actually one of the first things that I permanently installed in the van was the heater. I went through a bit of a process trying to figure out where to put it, which will unfold in due time here. And I just sat there one evening and just figured it out. Took my time and did an absolutely horrible job of explaining how I did it. So I may need to add in a few more bits and pieces to explain it, but hopefully it's enough to help you understand how the process went. And it was okay, so I'm in a bit of a pickle here. I'm trying to figure out where to put this heater with a basic layout that doesn't really add up, because I don't even want to explain why. I've been trying to figure out a location to put this. I got all my belongings for an entire winter of working up north right there. Everything else that I had when I did the original floor plan, and my insulation out on the ground, I'm just an ugly mess. But I need a heater to get me through the winter, because I'll have to spend some nights in here and it gets cold. So based on my basic layout for floor joists, and with the existing plan that I want to use, literally, and I mean literally, the only place I can install my heater is right about in there. Unless I want to put it further back in the garage, but that's not appealing to me. So I can't go on this side here because I've got exhaust and chassis in the way. So this is the only side I have, and I have a water tank that needs to go in here already. So this is my Espar heater. I've got a gasket here. I've got to drill this many holes and then I've got to fit this plate on there, and it comes with the seal as well. So I have to decide how far in my bed's gonna go. There's gonna be a wall that goes down. Behind it will be my heater and my water tank, which will be that long, basically. Now it's just deciding where to drill the holes and just put it in and pray that I'm doing this right. Okay, so I'm in the process of drilling my holes for my heater. These are the first holes I'm putting in my van, and I'm a bit nervous about this, but I'm gonna find out how things worked out here. I used the smallest drill bit I had so that I could make sure that when I start drilling with this one, it doesn't walk on me or move off center. It's kind of like hitting it with a punch. The holes are drilled, and as you can tell, there's not a lot of metal between the holes. So you have to be careful when considering that part of the process. I'm going to take the rest of this tape off and fit it, see how it goes. I've got my fuel pump installed, I guess you could say. I just used a simple L bracket, if I could get in there. Just used a simple L bracket with two of the self-tapping screws. I'm assuming it's the noise reduction holder for it, wrapped around it with one nut going straight through. I'm probably going to do something, add an extra washer, lock washer or nut to keep it from coming loose. The instructions suggest that you install it between, I believe it was a 15 and 30 degree angle upwards towards the heater itself. So I've done roughly that. Now about 2 feet to the right is my fuel tank, and I'll be grabbing this hose and attaching it up to this end here shortly. This is your electrical connection, and out of this end I just put all these on ahead of time instead of doing them on my back, which makes life a lot easier. And just out of the way of my reach, you can see where the fuel line, this guy here, goes right into the bottom of the tank. So it's just a short little roughly 2-foot run. What I've done is I found this plastic pipe, I guess you can call it. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's kind of PEX. I don't know what it's for. Was that a reuse it store? Anyways, I found some of it was really cheap. I thought it would be a great way to it fits over the outside of this fuel line, so it's just I'm putting it as a sleeve over top of it so that I can protect it from the elements and wear and tear and whatnot. So that's what I'm gonna do next. I don't have 4 arms, thanks Mom. Otherwise I could record this while I am installing it, but I'll just have to show you when I'm all done. One thing that I want to mention is that this fuel line needs to butt right up against the metal flange that comes out of this fuel pump. It comes about halfway up this coupling hose, I guess you can call it, and you do not want to leave a gap between the end of the metal line coming out of this fuel pump and where this plastic fuel hose couples up. If you leave a gap, if it ends right at this line here and I leave a gap like this, then air bubbles can fill in that little tiny void. So the instructions are implicit on ensuring that you have it butting right up against the plastic fuel line with the metal end of the fuel pump. And you're going to want to make sure you put this clamp over top of your fuel line before you tighten it down. Otherwise, you're going to take it off. And these plastic fuel lines are not easy to shove into the butthole of these connecting hoses. Let's see if I can do this with minimal clearance here for my elbows. I attached this outer jacket on. This time I left about an extra inch and a bit shorter than the fuel line itself, because it was very hard to push the fuel line into the black connecting butthole right here for the fuel pump. You have to, like I said, you have to get it right up tight against the end of the fuel pump metal line there. But at any rate, I ran it a couple of straps right on this electrical cord. One more over there to keep it off of the chassis itself. It's a very low risk of rubbing through, because if it's up against it over time, it rubs like this from vibration. It can wear through it, but it's a very rounded edge, so minimal concern. And yes, so I followed that all the way into my fuel line, roughly a 30-degree angle upwards as it's requesting. The electrical connection should be facing towards away from the heater, the output of the fuel pump, and just shoots across and goes right up into the heater itself. Now the only thing I screwed up on is the exhaust is too tight. It's very close to the fuel line, so I'm gonna have to loosen it off and put a little bit more, push it back a bit more to give a bit of a gap between the exhaust line and the fuel line. Apparently melting is a bad idea, they say. So, and that will conclude the fuel part of it. And in 1 second I will show you the exhaust and air intake. So my exhaust line comes out. I'm still going to bring this fuel line over with the zip strap tied to the electrical, just to get it a bit further away. Just feel more comfortable with that. I'm gonna have a above this wheel well and over here a bit where my bed is, I'm gonna have a window that opens. So I wanted to bring my exhaust line across as far as I could to the other side. Considering that my muffler only goes to here, I am not too concerned about it spilling out the back end like I've got it set up. I'm gonna do some further research. If need be, I will move it out the edge, which is what I believe you're supposed to do. However, if I do that, given the amount of exhaust pipe I was given, I would have to go out the wheel well. And if I can avoid that, I would like to. So seems to be a reoccurring thing, because when you look at this, is black hose is my air intake. It takes in the fresh air to heat up, and I've got it pointing right where my wiener is. That's all the hose that they gave me. I don't like the fact that my air intake is underneath the van, where two sources of exhaust are leaking out. So I will most likely have to shoot it out the wheel well, or bring it closer and come out the bottom here. Just trying to keep it out of the way of the weather and away from my suspension, although it's not a huge deal, I suppose. Bit more research anyway. And my other concern, of course, is I've got a hose for, I believe it's for filling fluid into the or grease or something. I don't know what it does, but I got a rubber hose that ends right here. I think it's for squirting stuff into my rear end, which in any other video would sound quite disgusting. But it's platonic today. Regardless, it's very close. I don't know how hot this is gonna be here, so I will be worried about melting happening or damaging this hose. So I got my muffler all secured now. I just took an L bracket, I bent it over to make almost like a C bracket, ran a bolt through. Basically this is all I had. I'll have to find a lock washer somewhere for it, or Loctite, or I'll just destroy these threads. One or the other. Either way, my muffler is secure. The next thing I did is I bought one of these L brackets and I bent it here in the same spot on the other side, and then just screwed it over top or onto the chassis so it fits over top of that hose and will theoretically act as a heat shield, and hopefully it will not give me any more issues. So that takes care of my second issue, and time to finish off the electrical on the fuel pump. Not being entirely sure how the layout of my wall is going to be, and trying to decipher where the flooring's going to end and whatnot, I needed to drill a hole to bring the electrical wire from the fuel pump up inside to attach to this wire harness. Now the wire is very small, but I drilled a big hole, and that's because I had this kicking around and it's a bit too big for the wire, but it can go in the hole and it'll protect the wire. I got the grommet to fit just perfectly. Unibit did a great job of drilling it, so I'm going to be able to run the wire through there now and get that terminated into this wire harness right here. I simply just connected the wire clip right into the fuel pump there, and gave it a couple wraps around this wire harness strap there. And then, as you can see, it goes right up in my grommet that I drilled out there earlier. I don't like it hanging loose here because I plan on putting some airbags in here later on, and I don't want any issues, so I will probably screw something down there to bring it over a bit. I'm unhappy with the fact that the opening is so close to my wheel well, because that can bring up water and dirt and stuff like that. So I will be siliconing the heck out of it, and I'll be keeping an eye on it as well. So as you can see, I ran my wire up through here, and I've just got to connect it onto this one right here. Now there's just two green wires, so it's a non-polarity wire, which this is the other end. I just have to strip off the ends of the wires. I attach these guys onto them, put them in this end of the clip, and then this guy here will go right inside here. Fits like mom and dad, job's done. Oh, in order to do these, so I'll strip back this wire a little bit more, the outer jacket. I'll strip off the ends of these wires to make them bare. Then I put the fat end over the wire and over the green part of the wire, so the bare wire is exposed. It goes on to it goes in through here, and then this part here gets squished in this little guy here, and this little part goes over the bare wires. That's how you hold everything into place. And then you'll shoot it up inside here, and it'll make a nice pretty little connection with these ends sticking out of here, and that's what will be married to the other end there. This is what your connection should look like when you're done, if I'd done this correctly. What I found was happening is that the bare end of the wire was really skinny for that connection, so I made it twice as long and folded it over to get a nice tight fit right where the bare wire is, and then folded it over top of the little rubber boot, whatever you want to call it. So this end here will go, for both of them, will go down in through there, and they'll sit right down where those little crosses are. The boots will stick out right here, and this will get folded over, and then this is ready to plug in, and then I'm ready to fire it up. There she is, all finished. And there's the little connections where the little plus was there earlier, and boom, plug it in. I'm ready to start it up, fire it up. One little thing that I did learn is underneath, when I was hooking up the fuel line from the fuel tank to the fuel pump, I had read online that priming the pump is very hard on it, making it work with no fuel in it, that is. So having the fuel running from the fuel pump to the pump is just going to create a lot of stress on it. It's hard on it and creates wear and tear, is what I'd read. So what I decided to do was suck the fuel up the hose right to the end of it, so that when I plugged it into the fuel pump, it was there was fuel already at the pump itself. Not thinking it through very well, once it starts coming out there, as long as the end of the fuel hose is below the fuel tank, it's going to keep coming out. And because I'm laying on my back underneath the van, working above my head, if I'm not careful, fuel's going to spill all over me. It gets all over your hands, and it doesn't taste very good. So whether it was a smart idea or not, I don't know, but if you decide to go that route, have something to wash your mouth out, or just tough it out like I did, and just be prepared that you're going to get fuel on everything, and it's going to get all over your hands, and it's great fun. But that was just something that I learned. So okay, so I jumped ahead of myself, and there's actually 2 more steps before I can fire this bad boy up. The first one is this wire right here, this red and brown one. They are the power source. They get hooked up to the battery itself. And on the positive side, which is the red, I believe, there is a fuse. Now, this piece comes already with this one attached to it, and I had to do similar to the last video where I added on an aluminum piece to fit in the end there. That aluminum piece right there, I had to push this wire all the way through. It comes out here, and then I attached this metal piece onto it, crimped it down, then pulled this wire back so that sits in place. It's really easy, straightforward. Then with being a 12-volt unit, I have to use the O2 fuse. So they say it's similar to the 20-amp fuse, but I think they're full of shit. So you just stick that in there. That protects that protects this power to the heater in the event that there's something going wrong. And if it trips, then the heater loses all power, and you just got to replace the fuse. And then there's a nice little cover to go over top, and of course you can fasten it down somewhere. Okay, I will see if I can get all this with one hand here. The second to last bit of electrical I have to do is hooking this bad boy up so that it can talk with the heater over there. The last, of course, being hooking it up to the battery to power it up. Leave that for the very end. Now on the wire harness there's one of these orange and gray guys right there. This guy is going to hook right up to it. And I'm just in the process of putting the connectors on the 4 wires. This is how they look. Okay, just at the tip of this finger, that's where the bare wire goes in, and then you just fold these little tabs over. That's what holds it in place. Then you shove it through the orange seal, if you will, or whatever you want to call it. The points stick out of here, and then they'll go inside the female ends over there. Other end of this wire is just this little 4-wire connector. It hooks into the 4-wire connector of the thermostat programmer, whatever you want to call it. I believe this is for if you're using a different system. I'm not entirely sure, but I get to ignore it. Now, what I don't fully understand is for some reason the heater needs to know where the end of the wire is that goes to this, and there is a resistor or thermistor or something in here, and this is somehow attached to these 4 wires here in this mess where the cable is thicker. So you just leave this on here. That gets hidden. This guy gets hidden. This hooks up to this. This hooks up to that. Power it up, and I'm good to go. I forgot to mention one thing. If you look inside there, you might be able to see those 4 little tips sticking up in the 4 corners there. It's kind of hard with the lighting I have. I apologize, but I hope you can see those 4 fine tips. They should be sticking up just past that orange seal there. And once I get those into place there, you'll see how they go if you do this. This little wedge goes right in down the center, and that holds the tips right where they need to be, so that when you're ready to put it in here, each tip will go in the corresponding hole, and that the other end of that wedge will go into either one of these spots there. That's what'll hold it all into place. So it's important that you understand how this is going to connect into that one, so that you know which wires to put in which holes to make sure that the blue matches with the blue with the black line matches with the blue with the black line, the brown matches the brown, and so on and so on. So you have to pay attention to what you're doing when you're doing this to make sure that it gets done right. Okay, last thing for sure. I need to put my hose on this unit, which I have here. First of all, that is the end that's blowing out all the hot air. That's the front end. This covers up the asshole on the back side of it. Okay, you'll be able to figure that out pretty easy when you install it. It just slides over it. Protects anything from getting into the moving fan back there. And then when you put this on, The front end, the business end, you of course simply tighten her down with the clamp. The other end of this bad boy, you slip this guy on. And of course use your second supplied clamp, tighten her down, and Bob's your uncle, Susan's your aunt, and van is hot. I've been running my heater for the last 3 hours, and I wanted to come and see how hot the muffler got. And I wasn't disappointed. The whole roughly 6 feet of exhaust pipe, including muffler, is too hot to the touch. Even right down at the very end there, the last few inches is still too hot to touch. So when you install it, make sure that you aren't near anything that could melt. I've got about an inch gap between my fuel line and the exhaust pipe, and it seems to be fine. It's not melting anything. My only issue is this wire harness. It's a bit close. I'm probably going to address that. But other than that, you can expect exhaust pipe to be hot. Not Paige sporadic hot, but leave your vehicle in the hot sun, touch the metal kind of hot. Yeah. I'm finally getting around to finishing this bottom drawer area here. Quite a while ago I made this setup. This is going to sit right down in that corner right there. And then my heater, which is in there, the hose is going to come out there and attach onto the back of this. So how the hose attaches on is you got one of these things right here. So that's just going to fit into place like that. I will screw it into the wood, and then this will stay just the way I want it. And then you have this cover plate that'll just sit over top of it like that. And then your hose will go onto here, and there's a hose clamp that goes around it. It holds it into place. And that's all there is to it. Here is the heater all finished. Don't mind my mess over there. I put it at a slight angle so that it blows it away from the wall, or the cupboard door. And I don't have to worry about discoloration or anything like that. So it blows straight out. I don't like the fact that it blows towards the front of the van, considering that my bed is up above. It's blowing the heat away from me. I would have rather had it be blowing in that direction, but considering I couldn't put... I wanted to originally have the heater underneath the seat. Then I could say I have a hot seat. But the heat would be blowing this way, which would be nicer. Although when I have this privacy blanket closed up, I got to fix that. That's kind of ignore that. It keeps the heat in pretty good, but it would have been nice to have had the heat blowing this direction. There was just too much in the way underneath the van that I couldn't put everything in there. So I think if I was to do another van build, I'd build a box in here that it would allow me to put the fan in there and just have a short vent hose blowing straight out that way. I think that's what I'd do in the future. I didn't feel right closing out this heater installation video without explaining how the heater works and a switching system that I came up for. We'll deal with this one a second here. But these are the controls that came with the heater that I bought. That's the fan option. That's the heat option. And just by playing with twisting this knob in different directions and pushing it in as a push button, you can do all kinds of little settings with that. Like you can have it come on and off at certain times of the days. You can program it from Monday to Fridays kind of thing. You can change how long the heater stays on or the fan. So all the options that I need are in here. It's pretty simple, easy to figure out. And the instruction manuals, when you buy it, explain it all, so it's not hard to figure out. So that's how I can turn my heater on. When I'm laying in bed and it's cold and I don't want to get out just to turn this on, what I did is I put it on hinges so that when I'm laying in bed, I can just pull it out and then I can look at it, do my thing, and then bada boom, bada bing. So that way I don't have to get out of bed or halfway out of bed and straining my eyes first thing in the morning to turn it on. So that takes care of that. Next up in here, I've got a control bank, a switch bank, whatever you want to call it. And one of the things that I did is I found a way that I can control my heater from either my leisure batteries or my van batteries. And to explain how that works, I got to take you into the bowels of my garage, which I'll do momentarily. So I'll explain what this does here, and then I'll explain in greater detail how I did it all coming up here in a few different segments. But essentially, right now the switch is set up. This is a double pole, double throw on, off, on switch. Okay, right now it's set up so that the leisure batteries are powering my heater. I can turn it in the middle. Now it's turned off, so now it's isolated. If I wanted to do some service work on the heater or whatever, there's no power going to it right now. And when I flip it over to here, then my van batteries, which are underneath the driver's seat, are now powering it up. So that's what this does. So let me explain how I made all of the... Oh, I did this because I've got lithium-ion batteries. And when it gets to a certain temperature out where it's cold enough, the batteries will go into hibernation. And so they shut off. And so if I was to come back to the van and it's really cold out and my leisure batteries have... went into hibernation mode, I got no heat. So this by having this option, I can flop it over to van batteries, turn on the heat. I can get warm. The inside of the van gets warm. And then down here, this is where my fuse bank goes. I've been procrastinating on finishing this, but my fuse bank, if my router wasn't in the way, it folds down. I can look at my fuses, whatever. That's a whole other story for another day. But I can open this up with the heat blaring. Heat can go into my garage where, as you can see, my leisure batteries are. They can get warmed up. They'll wake up, start working again. And then I can flop that back over to leisure batteries to power my heater, so I'm not worrying about draining my van batteries. So that's the main reason for that option. So now let's go into the garage. I gotta pull the bike out and a few other things. Give me a second, and then I'll explain what I did down here.
Welcome to the darkest,
and then
deepest
we'll get into the how to wire in one of those switches that are up there
for me.
Okay, what are you seeing here? This is the hole that I was just talking about. There's my fuses right there. Looking down on my van batteries, my leisure batteries, sorry. Right down here is my Espar gas-powered heater. And I can adjust myself here. This is how I wired it in. So, a bit of a backstory. As you already know, you can charge your leisure batteries through a DC to DC charger by running wires from your van batteries to here, and then from here down to your leisure batteries. So your alternator is actually charging them. So these number 3 wires go to my van batteries. And I was thinking about it one day when I had these installed. I actually have power from from my van batteries back here in the garage. That's kind of interesting. How can I take advantage of that? And so what I did is I contacted Renogy, and because I wanted to control my heater, like I said, from my van batteries in the event that I don't have power in my leisures. They said that they do not recommend attaching additional wires to these lugs. So that was out of the question. Obviously on the output side there, that's not an option. So after thinking about it for a few days, I got the idea. Let me see if I can zoom in on this. I got the idea to drill holes in my plywood wall, and I stuck 2 stainless steel bolts through, put a lock washer, a flat washer, and a nut on, tighten it against the plywood wall, and I had enough shaft left over that I could bring the number 3 wires from the van batteries onto there with lugs, and then I can shoot them out over to here. So power just goes basically through these stainless steel bolts and carries on to the DC. Anyway, now I've got power on these 2 stainless steel bolts. So as you can see, I've got a heat trace up here and my heater down here. I did the same thing with the heater, or the heat traces I did with the heater, but we won't worry about that right now. So for this heater here, I just took a number 10 wire and I put a connector on it and attached it onto the red side of one of the stainless steel bolts. It goes through a 20 amp fuse, and then that and a black number 10 off of the other one, they both go right up to that double pole, double throw on off switch to the one side. And then what I did is, going from my fuse box, I got a dedicated circuit coming all the way up through there, and it goes onto the other side of the switch for my leisure batteries, and that's how I ran power up there. And then in the middle, I've got, if I can get this right down here is a god-awful mess of wires. That came with the Espar heater when I bought it. The extra wires are for different control systems that you can use to control the heater. I'm not using any of them. I was going to cut them off, but I'm not using this area for anything. So in case something changes, I've got them there. Anyway, whatever. Extra wires, not using, sitting there. That's enough. There are 2 wires that bring, in this mess, that bring power down to this heater to bring power to it. There's additional wires to control it, but so 2 wires out of this mess go up all the way over to that switch that's up above there by the heater controls as well, a red and a black. So that is how this heater here is powered. Now let me explain to you how I wired in the switch. Okay, what we're gonna do here is I'm gonna explain how a double pull, double throw, on, off, on switch works. Okay, double pull means that there's 2 poles that switch, so that you can effectively switch 2 circuits at once. Double throw is the action that the switch does, so it can go from off to on one way or on in another way, so it's double throw. If it was just an on-off switch and there was no other on, it would be a single throw, so it'd be double pull, single throw, on-off switch. Okay, so your throws is the amount of directions or amount of movements your switch can make. Off is not considered a throwing movement. The pole is the number of poles in the switch that are being switched, which I'll explain here in a second. So if we were to draw this oversized toggle switch right here. This is the main body of it. A normal switch, if it was a single pole double throw on switch would just have these 3 terminals, okay? And you could have a power source here and a power source here, and then your load here, for instance. Or you could have the power source here and one type of load here and another type of load there, however you want to do it. And when you switch, when the switch is in the center, it's off. But if you switch it over to this way, then I'm not sure how it works. I think different switches are different. It may connect these two, and then when you flip the switch to on this way, it might work these two, or it could be the opposite. That you figure that out when you install the switch itself. So single pole double throw on switch would just have these 3 terminals. Now that's considered one pole right here, because there's only one circuit being manipulated, if you will. So when you've got a double pole, that means you've got 2 circuits that can be controlled from this one switch here. So now you got 2 poles, so that's your double pole, and these are your 2 different throw actions, so it's a double throw. This is on, this is off, and that is on. Hence your double pole, double throw, on, off, on. Okay? Pretty straightforward. In the case of the heater, what we've done is we've ran a wire from the van battery, the 2 toggle bolts, or stainless steel bolts. We've ran a red wire up to one side of it as your positive, and your black wire up to the bottom side. Now, of course, I had a junction that went up to a fuse box, and then it actually goes to the bolt itself, so that it's fused, because it's not coming, there's no other fuse box between here and the van battery itself. So that's fused there. This is the power from the van batteries, and I'll just quickly write this down here. Van batteries. Okay, and then on the other side we have the same thing from the leisure batteries that power up my house part of my van. I just brought in from the fuse box itself, its own circuit. I just brought in a red and a black as well, and notice how I keep the reds on the same side and the blacks on the same side. Doesn't matter how you do it, just make sure you keep them the same. So power's coming from the van batteries here, and power is also coming from leisure. Power's also coming to the switch from the leisure batteries. Very straightforward so far. So now we need to get power down to the heater. So what we do is, that's what this guy here is for. So I don't know how else to draw this, so I'm just going to do it like this. And there you have it. There's power wires that feed the heater that come out of that control cable mess of wires that's in the back of the van there. And they just go into the middle here. So when you flip the switch, the van batteries are bringing power to the center here. That heats up your heater. You flip it off. Now there's no power there at all, which is great if you want to do some service work on the heater itself, or you just want to isolate it for whatever reason from anything being able to bring power to it. Flip it on the other way and your laser batteries are powering it up. That's all there is to it. Now I want to talk about the biggest concern that I have about doing this. And so let's start with coming from the van batteries itself to the DC to DC charger is this massive 3-gauge wire. You got a red and a black, right? And these can easily handle 40 amps of electricity. And then they go to this shiny stainless steel bolt. And out of this shiny stainless steel bolt, I run a tiny number 10 gauge. I believe it's number 10 gauge. Pretty sure it is. Wire. And that goes off to the double pole, double throw switch. Now, the problem here is this number 10 wire can only handle, I don't know what the exact number is, but about half the amperage that these big fat cables can handle, these big fat wires. And the tiny little fuse that I have in here is only rated for like 20 amps. So it's like half the amperage. So the danger is as long as you have got the circuit at the batteries right here in your van, I've got a circuit breaker right here. It comes out of there and then it goes into there. So this circuit breaker protects this entire wire through this bolt and into the DC to DC charger. So this wire is protected with this breaker, but this breaker is for 40 amps. It's not going to protect this tiny little wire here because it's only rated for like half of that. So by the time, if this is pumping full 40 amps and the DC to DC charger is doing its job and it's charging my leisure batteries, and I decide to turn on my heater via my van batteries, these wires are going to melt so fast because there's just too much amperage going through them. It generates way too much heat and they're just going to melt. This fuse is going to blow and nothing is going to work at all according to plan. So really having to understand that if you're going to use this setup, the only time that you can use your van batteries to power the heater is if your DC to DC charger is not working. So essentially only when the vehicle is shut off. If you've got your vehicle turned on and you just got it in park and you just got the engine running, if this breaker is turned on, then power is coming down these wires and it's going to turn on your DC to DC charger. Unless you have a switch that shuts off your D plus wire. You can learn more about that on the install video that I'm going to be doing, or I already did do, I don't know, on installing the DC to DC charger. But your DC to DC needs this wire, the D plus wire, doing its job for it to turn on and start charging your leisure batteries. So if you disconnect that via a switch, then power, and if this is not tripped, if this is active, then power still goes through here even with the engine running, and your DC to DC charger will not work. But if your DC to DC charger is working and doing its job, these wires should be fine because there is no load. Nothing is requiring electricity to go up and down these wires. Should be fine. Should is the key word here. But if you do try to turn that heater on when the DC to DC charger is on, that's going to trip right away, and you risk melting this and frying the electronics in your heater and whatever else can happen. So very, very, very important that the only time you switch your heater, should you decide to do this, from leisure batteries to van batteries, and use your van batteries to turn on that heater, is when your DC to DC is not working. I can't emphasize that enough. And having said that, the only other caveat that I have, something to be aware of, maybe somebody has an answer to this that I don't. When I first did this setup, shortly afterwards, this fuse blew. And it hasn't done it since. It might have just been a screw up on the installation, a faulty fuse. I don't know. But my only worry was that somehow, even though there's no load, I know the switch works fine, so there was no reason for electricity to go through it through the switch. But I'm worried that somehow electricity somehow came up there, tripped that while the DC to DC was working, without me having that switch flipped over to leisure or to the van batteries. So as far as I know, this works fine, and other than that one issue, I haven't had any problems. But I am not an electrical mechanic when it comes to automotive, so I don't know if there's any flaws to this system. If you decide to use it, buyer beware. Do it at your own risk. If there's something I'm missing, if there's something that you feel you can add to this, please add a comment in there, and we can go from there. Just a few things for you to think about there if you're going to install a heater like I did. I couldn't walk for about 3 days after I got the bill for that one. It was like $2,700 for a heater. That was really expensive. I had been looking at doing the cheap Chinese diesel heaters that you can get for like $300 to $500, but the thought of being 30 below zero and that dying on me and having to reinstall another one in that freezing cold wasn't very appealing to me for some reason. So I wanted the peace of mind of knowing that I should have a reliable heater for several years to come. So I went with the extra expense. Whether it was a good idea or not, I don't know, but it's still holding out, going on. I just finished my third winter with it, and it's starting to smell a bit of exhaust fumes are coming inside, so I got to change some gaskets out. Other than that, hopefully it should be fine for several more years to come. But yeah, consider if you're considering getting one, look at the alternatives. There's Espar, Webasto, cheap Chinese, and I believe there's a Russian one as well that's typical in the marine industry. And of course, you can get some really cheap other knockoffs. You can also look at electric heat, which I really wouldn't advise unless you've got just stupid, crazy battery power, because it uses up a lot of electricity. And if there's any other alternatives, like in-floor heating, that where you heat up glycol, that's also an option. But for what I did, the S-bar was good enough for me. The only thing I regret is not having a secondary source of heat in case that died on me and I was cold. So I think if I was to do another build, I'd have a backup system in place to be able to keep me warm. really there's just a fireplace, a wooden fireplace, which some people do, and I wanted to install in mine because I don't know if you noticed, we got a lot of trees where I'm from, so it just never happened. Cubic Mini is the one I recommend. It's actually made out, I think, in Quebec, so a Canadian product, nice and small. It looks like it would be great. Of course, you got people who claim it's a terrible idea to have a wood fireplace in a van, and so there's always going to be some controversy over that. So whatever you decide, if you're going to go with like an Espar style heater, then hopefully this video helped you out to better understand it a bit. And if you're uncertain about how to do it, or if you don't have the right skills to do it, just hire somebody to do it. You definitely don't want to get this wrong. Best of luck on it, and I'll see you on the next video.